So Bulgarians is a lot more like pistol squats and step-ups. You lean your weight and the leg forward. The biggest thing that I found Bulgarians that we have to reteach is this step, the distance between the first step. So what we normally do is we go, if we teach it on a bench, or actually a pad, I'll show you both because we use that pad for that one too. We start on the bench and we start calves on the bench. We'll do 2 small steps forward. That's usually what we start at, people, right? We're gonna go, once we start with the 2 small steps forward, we're gonna try to see if we can balance here. You're gonna always try to aim to put the edge of their ankle right here. A lot of people like to go just on their tippy toe, and it's a lot more balancing like that, especially older people, because they don't have the ankle flexibility, right? Other people like to be on their toe like that, right? Exactly, and then you use the back leg a lot. So we want to try to be at the edge of the ankle. We're probably gonna be putting like 10-20% of our weight in the back leg. We still have to use our back leg, but we wanna make sure we lean forward. So it's kind of like the baby lunge. The baby lunge looks like this, right? If I'm putting everything from a side perspective, it's almost gonna look the same. I'm still leaning a little bit forward. I'm still letting my knee go as far as possible as forward without bringing my heel up. So for you, that might look different than him because you have a tight ankle. What I might do for you is pull your heel up on a plate or in a raised ramp to make sure you try to go forward more, right? Let me see, but in terms of the first one we do is we do assisted holds, right? So everything goes the same way. I'm gonna teach it on the bench and I'm gonna show you the pad. So let's say this is my hold. I can also use 2 PVCs. I can use myself, assisted human, right? So we're gonna go 1-2 steps forward. I'm gonna have that person make sure we first step, okay, is your ankle good? Is your heel good? I'm gonna tell him, hey, or her, I'm gonna make sure, hey, you're pushing through your toe. I sometimes show him without shoes so I can show him better. If I go 1, 2, you're gonna still have your tripod on your foot, right? You're pushing through your big toe, your little toe, and your heel. I'm gonna have the edge of the ankle on. From here, I'm gonna go down to a comfortable depth. I'm gonna try to keep my weight forward. It might look like this, and that's okay. I'm gonna keep my weight forward. I'm gonna hold. That burns already by itself, right? Even for me, it just burns holding it there. The lower you go, the more you're gonna feel it in your quad, especially the further forward you go, you're gonna feel a lot more in the front leg. If you lean back, you're gonna feel it on both legs a little bit less. And if you're watching really deeply, you're watching for that person through those 10, 20, 30 seconds to lean back. You don't wanna let them do that. Hey, stay leaning forward a little bit more, right? Let's see. You want to talk about strong core. So a lot of people, to avoid tension in their leg, they're just going to start compensating. So some compensating patterns we'll see is they'll arch their back, right? And put pressure on their hand or something like that. Hey, I want you to keep your rib cage down, right? Or I want you to keep your core tight. You can't really flex your butt on this one specifically because you're just holding it. The only time you're ever gonna flex your butt is when you're coming up straight. So for this one, I wouldn't cue that. Minimal weight in the back leg we talked about, just slightly leaning forward. So it also doesn't wanna seem like, you wanna make it seem like this. It's not a hinge, right? It's a squat. We're leaning forward, but leaning forward is gonna help us put weight in the front leg because you're counterbalancing, right? Let's see. So we take, and then sometimes it takes more than just 1 rack. Sometimes it takes 2 things. So what I have to do is at that point, if I see, damn, this person's not getting it, I can do 2 things from here. I can bring a PVC pull, I can use my hand on the other side, or I just switch the way the bench is seated, right? To be able to do it rack assisted, right? Putting pressure in the front like this. I mean, by now you've seen everything we do rack assisted. It's very beneficial to be rack assisted just because it forces you to lean forward anyways. When you're rack assisted, most people won't do this because you don't have any pressure in your arms like this. They mostly lean forward already, so it just helps with that definition, right? And eventually, let's say I use both racks, we go to the next progression would be unassisted. So you'd be here, hey, try not to hold onto the rack, right? Try to still put weight in the front foot. You're still gonna put weight in your back foot, whether that looks like this, whether that looks like this. Obviously, we might build that first progression of assisted to a lower depth, and then when we start the second progression, it might start higher up, and we gotta teach it to go lower by themselves, right? From there, we started with assisted body weight. So we start going into the same thing. We can be together with both hands, but at this point they're comfortable holding here for 20 seconds. They gotten used to it. So now at this point I'm gonna start teaching the same way. Hey, nothing changes, 2 steps forward. You're gonna keep your foot back, ankle right at the edge of the line. You're gonna lean forward, keep your toe and your heel down the ground, making that tripod with your foot. Don't let, if you start seeing your knee set aside, they're probably not controlling their ankle, right, or toes. So if they lose their toes or they pick up their toes, they're probably gonna wobble their knee in. Right, so I'm looking for them not to wobble the knee around. I'm looking for the knee to track over the toe. Let me see, and I'm trying to go for a comfortable depth. I don't want to get all the way down to the ground yet. I just want to get nice and comfortable. The lower the better, but if it hurts the back knee, that's what I'm paying attention, or the front knee. Most of the time when you feel people saying that their back knee's hurting, that also means that you're probably putting a lot of weight on it, right? Too much weight on the back foot, you're at really like a, how would you say it, at a terminal knee angle. So you're putting, like if somebody can't bend that far, you're already putting too much pressure, especially somebody older. You might already be asking for trouble, so you want to be careful with that. We want to talk about their hips. So hey, it's not, another thing people start doing when they start going from a hold to an assisted version, they might start hinging at their hips and thinking they're getting low enough, right? So I'm doing this. That's not really working my leg, that's working my hips. So I want to get low to be able to work my leg, right? So I want to see from the side angle, the hips moving up and down. The knees will bend, but if I coach the hips moving up and down, the knees will automatically follow. If you just coach bending the knee, my knee still bends a little bit when I'm hinging. It will bend a lot more when your hips go down, right? So I'm coaching the hips moving up and down. I'm driving through that tripod of the foot, and I'm assisted on both hands, but I can also start leaning away from that, and I could just be unassisted if you're gonna have it unassisted, I usually choose to unassist the counter opposite hand. Usually. This side, I'll start pulling towards it. If I pull towards this side, it evens out with the counter hand. Yeah. Okay, and then let's go over the pad version. So, we used to have this all over the place when the racks were a lot longer. It wouldn't bother us to be right next to the wall, but now we don't really do it unless we do it body weight. So what we do is we put this about 3 to 4 notches up, depending on people's height. This is about the same height as the bench, right? The pads roll, so it's a lot easier. Somebody is older and is cramping on their foot, it's just gonna be really uncomfortable. So sometimes I have to teach to put the foot down like this because it just keeps cramping. So for that type of person, it might be easier to have a PVC here, start here. Well, we'll do our same thing, right? 1, 2 steps forward, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna go down and back up, but the pad is now rolling with me. So it's a lot more comfortable on my ankle. That's the only thing that really changes here. Let me think. On this one, on the pad version, yeah, so when I have weights on this, it just makes it more difficult because most of the weights will roll against this, right? So I try to teach, I use the pad for body weight most of the time. Once I start adding dumbbells, unless it's gonna be a goblet style, if I add dumbbells to the side, I'm gonna start rubbing against the wall, but at the same time, people feel really comfortable being close to the wall because they can bounce off it, right? So they don't lose their balance as much. So it's a give and take. I'd rather do the bench, but the pads are super easy. If it's body weight, I would choose the pad over the bench. You have to bring less equipment. If you already have the bench out, I already have the bench. It's more about logistics at that point. There's less equipment if you just stick with one thing. If you have to just bring out the bench for the Bulgarians, it's another whole thing. I'd rather just use the pad, right? It's just a lot easier if you already have equipment on the floor. So at that point, you're thinking about logistics. Okay, so that's body weight assisted. So then we go to unassisted, which nothing changes at that point. It's just 2 steps forward. At this point, you've been assisted. We're gonna let go of your hands, and you're gonna try to do it without your hands, right? Everything goes knees over toes, tracking in line. I'm looking for side-to-side movement. I'm inhaling, going down, exhaling, going up. I'm keeping my rib cage down. I'm not extending my upper back. Let me think. My gaze is like, if I'm looking at the, I'm trying to look 45 degrees down, whether it usually means to me the baseboard. I don't want to look up, right, because I'm putting too much pressure on my cervical spine. I also don't want to look all the way down just because it's going to throw me forward wherever I look, right? It's going to throw my chest forward.
But with your front leg, are you locking out or keeping it like a...
Good question, good question. So, that's a very good question. So okay, so if I do it, let's go ahead and we're going to try to do it. I want to be able to lock out, but still keep my weight in my hips. What I don't want to do is lock out and feel like I'm leaning forward. A lot of people, when they lock out their legs, they lean forward. I do want to lock out. The goal is to lock out, but if it means that I'm locking out, leaning forward, I'd rather not lock out, right? If I tell somebody, let me just try to do it this side, because that way you can see me. If I tell somebody to lock, no, it's this way actually. If I tell somebody to lock out and they're not feeling their glutes or feeling their lower back, that probably means they're finishing like this, right? And we don't want to finish like this. We want to finish slightly lean forward, but with our hip extended. That's a different definition from hip extended and arching your back. It's the same thing as the deadlift, right? When you finish your deadlift, you want to finish here. You don't want to finish here, right? So it just depends on how you see it. It depends on the angle. What I do tend to do is I don't force a lockout, but I force them to squeeze their glutes. I don't coach lockout at the top.
Yeah, okay.
I tell them squeeze your glutes at the top. Usually when they squeeze your glutes at the top, they're locking out at the top, usually, because it's really hard to not squeeze your glutes and not lock out. You won't be able to lock out if you don't squeeze your glute. All right, so a knee release Bulgarian. So let me get a pad, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If you do it on the bench, it might take you 2 pads. If you do it on the pad, it'll only take you 1 pad, so just know that, because the bench is a lot higher than you could put the pad lower. For me at least, obviously that also depends on femur length and tibia length. So for this one,
which one is this?
The knee release. Oh, you don't have it. My bad. It's gonna be, I don't know why is this here then. On number 4, number 3, Bulgarians bodyweight assistant. Next to it should be knee release Bulgarian. Yeah, that's the only one I think. Yeah, that's the only one. I don't know why it's not there. Okay, so you don't want to feel a stress through the back leg. That's number 1 thing, right? You want to make sure the reason for this is to help understand what it feels like to lean forward. So the same thing applies. You're going to start here. You're going to take 2 steps forward. In this case, I'm going to go on my right leg. So when I'm going down, I'm going to release the pressure of my front leg. Coming up, I'm going to put pressure back into it. So I'm kind of like, this is kind of like to help somebody understand how to completely let go and then pull the way back up. It's almost like a get up. Like a get up. It's exactly like a get up, right? But you're teaching somebody on how to release. It's almost like a floor press too. When you're floor pressing, you're letting go of all, and you're working from a most biomechanically deficient possible. So you're working on that concentric leg strength without any assisted or isometric phase, right? You're coming from a full 0 start, no momentum whatsoever. You don't want to feel a stretch in the back leg. If you feel a stretch through the back leg, 2 things could be happening. They're really, really tight, which is very normal. So just increase the height of that pad, or they're going too low. Which, like for example, like for me, this one might be too much because I just feel a stretch right here compared to this, and I'm barely can put my knee down. Compared to this one, I'm coming here, I don't feel a stretch through here yet. But my weight is gone on my front leg. I'm shaking it out, right? Once I'm loaded, I shouldn't be able to shake this leg. So another thing I might do while I'm coaching would be, okay, at the bottom, hey, if I push this leg, does it move around? Yeah, perfect. You know what I mean? Like, and the other thing you could do is, if you know somebody's using their front leg, not just for this, but for anything, if you know somebody's not using their front leg, what you would do is at the bottom, test them and mess around with their leg. If it's moving a lot, then I don't have any more pressure in the front leg. All the pressure in the back leg. That way you can show them, hey, I need you to put more pressure. This leg's not stable. If it had more weight, it wouldn't move when I touch it, right? Yeah, so you're starting on the pad. You start at the bottom, starting on the pad. You lean into your front leg and you drive up. So it teaches you how to drive up from that front leg, right? And then you want to see from the side, like we talked about, you want to see your hip, knee, and ankle in line. That's your goal, if you can see it in line. So in this case, my ankle's on top of my hip, my knee, that's in line. This could also be slightly in line. It's slightly off line, but if I do this and I arch my back, I'd rather just see that, we talked about, right? But at the top, you want to see almost everything, right? Whether it be lunges, whether it be pistols, at the top, everything's in a line. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Squats, deadlifts, at the top, I'm looking for the hip, knee, and ankle to be on top of each other. Otherwise, something's making up the work. Usually it's your lower back, usually. Questions so far, any of those? No? From here on out, it's just different variety, right? So now, counter-loaded, like we did in the lunge too, we're gonna be, I'm still doing my measurement, 1, 2. At this point, everybody knows how to do their measurement. I'm gonna put my opposite foot down, so I have my left leg forward, the weight's on my right arm. From here, I'm going down and coming back up. That's my counter movement, counter loaded, right? Usually we'll teach somebody counter loaded before we teach them double arm, weighted. But another good thing, if you ever run into somebody that can do counter loaded, they haven't been double hand loaded, try a double hand loaded on the second set and see if it works, because sometimes having weights on the side helps ground yourself. The counter loaded just might be too much instability, right? So it's nothing wrong with you trying it. It says counter loaded and you say, oh damn, this is too much for them. You try it double arm loaded and it's better. Just tell us and we'll switch it around. But that's what I'm saying about like templating. We'll have a template, but it's up to you to figure out if this works or not for that person. And that's what all these progressions and regressions are for, right? All right, so then we have goblet. So a little bit more unstable at that point, right? So we're gonna be here, taking our steps forward. I'm gonna do my right leg back. So I'm gonna keep my chest up. I'm gonna go down and back up. So the only thing that changes is instead of having weights on one side or the other, I have my weight in front of me. So it's gonna make me a lot more unbalanced when the weight goes up, right? I can't really use my sides now. I have to use my core to hold myself down, right? So there's a lot more core focus on this one. All the other cueing stays the same for that. Same side loaded. So instead of having, if I do my 2 steps, now I have my same side loaded. It's just gonna be a lot harder to balance at the bottom, right? Because I wanna pull towards the leg that I have in front and my weight is on the same side. I wanna use my core to pull myself in and stay in line. I wanna go slow so I don't feel at the bottom like oh shit, I'm gonna fall over, right? Definitely same side loaded is a lot harder than counter loaded. If you're gonna use one arm, start with counter, then go to same side. And then we just got a bunch of different tools. We use a med ball as a goblet. We use barbells behind your back, right? Same thing. So I'll show you that in a second. We use Bulgarian bag. Have you guys messed around with the Bulgarian bag? Yeah? So we can put it, have you seen the Bulgarian bag?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. So let me show you the Bulgarian bag. So we only have one. It's a 50-pounder. What's up?
I haven't used one.
Okay, so that's okay. So what we do with this one is somebody that can't barbell back squat, but they're getting a lot better at everything, but we just can't because their shoulders are really tight. We usually can't get people here. We might try to front squat them, front rack squat them, but it's gonna be too hard. You could also put more dumbbells, but at some point that's gonna be too heavy, right? So you could do it 3 different ways. You can load it on their back. You load it as a coach, they're gonna do the same thing, right? It's just loaded from the back. That's it, but they're easier to hang on because the weight's in front of you. Yeah, okay, so the other one you could do is you can front rack load it. So you're gonna keep it here like a front squat, right? And the last one you can do is you can like searcher squat load him, right? That's the 3 variations you can do with Bulgarian bag. It's also the 3 variations you can do with the barbell. Behind, front squatted, and then searcher squatted. You can do all 3. The one that's really difficult would be overhead. We haven't even gotten anybody to do it. Could be here, right? Overhead squat. We can do it with the PVC. We do it for PVC sometimes for warm up. Front rack we talked about. So if you had 2 kettlebells, you can have them front racked. The kettlebell sticking out to the side. You can have the counter loaded, same side loaded, same thing, but front rack position for kettlebells, right? We go over front rack and all that stuff for kettlebells or no? Do you remember what it looks like? So a front rack for kettlebells is gonna be, let me show you. So if we do a front squat position for a kettlebell, it would look like this. I have to get my shoulders out and I'm holding them like this tight. Okay, so this is the front rack position if you're using a kettlebell. Okay, so if I'm here, I'm squatting down this way. I'm not letting my knuckles turn out. That's the biggest thing. It's gonna put a lot of weight in your wrist. That's the sacrifice you're taking, right? But your shoulders should be down, relaxed, elbows down by the side. You're not trying to hold them together because it's gonna round your shoulders too much. You're gonna try to sink. You're trying to think about sinking your shoulder blades down in place, but letting the kettlebell rest to the side. You're actively trying to pull the kettlebell in. You're not letting the kettlebell take away from you. So obviously the heavier weight, the more it wants to pull out, the more you have to use your forearms to pull them in. You're gonna try to think about having a straight line through your knuckles. You would punch someone like this, you wouldn't punch anybody like this, right? So that's what I'm thinking about. And then what I'm saying on the same side and counter side, this would be same side, front loaded, but on one side. This would be counter side, right? Step up, we can do the same way. Lunges, we can do the same way, right? What's up, Tets? Questions on that? Do you want me to show you with the barbell? Same. You think it's the same? You think you understand it? It's the same placement as the back squat. You're gonna be here, you're gonna be front squat or like this, and you're gonna be searcher squat the same exact way. It's the same setup. What you would do is, you would never have him facing that way for a Bulgarian. You was gonna have him facing that way. So you set up the bench here. What you would do is you would unrack the bar. Let's say it's a back one. Unrack the bar, walk back so you would cast us to the bench. From here, you start setting up, right? 2 steps back, you're going down. What I always tell people is, hey, if you feel good, go into the next leg. If not, rack the weight after you finish one leg. Let your legs recover and your grip recover. Unrack it and go back to the other leg. Reset for both sides. Let me think. Yeah, that's good. All right, and let me get a Balor box real quick. All right, hey Tootsie. And now we have what's the last one? Exactly, so front foot elevated. So it's almost like a hybrid between a deficit lunge, a step up, and deficit anything, because you're gonna let your knee go lower than the front step. That's your goal at least, right? So what you would do is you step up on your box. I mean, this one is kind of weird because there's no right distance. You want to try to find what their 2-foot distance is, and maybe you could put it there, but might have to come closer just because you're going deeper. You're not going as far forward since you're going deeper. So for me, it probably looks like this. I'm gonna step up on my Balor box. I'm gonna put my heel, my toe, and my ankle right at the edge. So this might be too close because I might touch, but for now it's good. I'm gonna keep my 2 dumbbells on my side, or my goblet, or my ladder, on my front squat position, whatever it is, or just body weight, right? And I'm trying to get my knee to get lower. That's all it is. I'm trying to push my toe, my heel, my little toe, going low, and then we're gonna switch legs since the weight's already there, and I have to reset myself. Okay? It does force you a lot more range of motion. So you feel a lot more in all over your legs for sure. Let me think. Questions on this?
Why do you choose 2 small steps?
Why do you choose
2 small steps.
2 what?
2 small steps.
Oh, okay, good question. Because if you did, usually at the top it would align you, right? It's the same way I teach it, kind of like with the baby lunge, because you want to kind of fall into a baby lunge position. So when you fall into a baby lunge position, the only thing in a baby lunge, this knee's gonna be able to come forward. This is not gonna be able to come forward because it's gonna go straight down, right? So I kind of want to make it look like this position. My shoulders are 45 degrees from the ground. My knees, or my front knee, is about 45 degrees shin, right? So I'm like this with my, actually squatting and lunges, Bulgarians, pistols, they're all gonna have the same idea. If you see me squat, at the bottom, I'm gonna be the same angle on my shins is gonna be the same, it's supposed to be the same angle on my back, right? So I wanna be parallel to each other. It's the same thing with everything you do, and it's only the only closest thing we got to standardize in terms of like how we can make it fit everybody. Sometimes, trust me, sometimes I'll be like 2 steps, that person has short legs, I'll be like, oh no, I gotta come back a lot more. Or let's go step forward a little bit more. But you can kind of tell after do the first 2 reps, like, oh shit, like this is way too far. Okay, lean forward a little bit more. Most people start like this though, right?
If you're too far forward, wouldn't it be more glute focused instead of
Yes, and the back leg too. You're gonna put too much weight on their back leg for sure. Exactly. You can't activate that front leg, and we're trying to push that front leg. We got plenty of exercise for the back leg, but if we're trying to put weight onto the front leg and teach the front leg, that's where we keep almost everything tight and together a lot more. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions? That was a good question. It's a very good question. Did I answer your question? Okay. I was trying to get that shin to be in front. But like I said, like for example, if I did, the other way we could think about it, if I did 1 step, too close, right? If I did 3 steps, that's almost always too far, right? So the closest that we've been able to see is let's start with 2 steps, and let's see what that looks like. That's usually the right angle, because 1 step's too close and 3 steps too far. It might be 2.5, it might be 1.5. So I'm saying there's a range there, but 2 steps is the first thing we try, because it's just the easiest thing to try. Then we try to rearrange it from there, for sure.